Question, self-interest. What does that mean in terms of these financial industries? You know, you make a persuasive case that it is in their self-interest to accept regulation, to maintain stability, to assure profitability, blah, 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 blah. And yet they don't translate it that way. What is it? It's not just that they're afraid, it seems to me. They must have an agenda and a calculation that is resisting all of the ideas that you're putting forward, and yet you're putting them forward in the context of self-interest. So how do you persuade people about their own self-interest if they don't see it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they have been living in a glass house or a glass basket, whatever picture you do. They have been living in their own life, in their own small speculative houses for years. And when I talk about competition, they don't understand what I'm talking about, because competition in their life is not of the kind I understand it. And secondly, you should know, of course, that the margins and the revenues have been so enormous that any change in the circumstances will have direct effect on their earnings. So you're talking about a group of people who are among the richest in the world. I mean, if you take the extreme, the 5 richest private equity managers in US in average, they earn 22,000 times more than an American industrial worker per year. Each 10 minutes, these guys earn 1 year's industrial American workers' whole revenue. So it's fundamentally about, shall we give away our enormous potential and realized revenue possibilities in the future, or shall we just continue and hope for that we can avoid? This is a classical fight about those who have and those who have a bit less. But it's more than that. It's also because the operations in Wall Street, in City, are having far more devastating consequences today than they have ever had before. That's why we come in, guys like me, and say, well, we can't just continue as we've seen in the past.
Ásgeir, in terms of self-interest, can you put your 2 cents in where there?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but I actually know that in the free market regulation is actually very easily actually circumvented. Iceland was actually quite popular with hedge funds, and I don't really blame them for the fall, but I think that some of the currency bubble would have been averted with some kind of tax.
Well, we've got lots of more questions here. We'll keep them rolling here because we don't have a lot of time. Please keep them short. I know, guys, you've got lots to talk about. We're going to keep our speakers. You'll talk to them in the break as well. Question here.
Hi, this is for Poul mainly. Why has the centre-left had such difficulty in turning the crisis to its political advantage? Because you dealt with the lobbying machine in Brussels, but in some senses, if one was maybe naive, one would expect that a capitalist crisis would play to the centre-left advantage, and you'd see the centre-left parties doing well in the polls and well in elections, but we don't see that. And maybe this also connects with Ásgeir as well. Maybe the damage outside Iceland is not large and visible enough, because after all, in Iceland, you know, the European integration thing is now on the agenda after the crisis, so there is at least some kind of political outcome. But in Europe, what's happening?
I think two points in this question, which of course is central also in my mind and in many social democratic parties' mind all around Europe, as you ask right now. There was not among ordinary people this combination between this financial crisis, the neoliberal models breaking down, and you could call it a center-right policy. People didn't combine like that. If you ask them, they said it's the Wall Street and it's City and it's the banks, but they did not combine it to some political issue. They did not discover that we have insisted for regulation long before this crisis here. So the chance now is to try to understand what's going on in ordinary people's mind. And what I want, that's my second point, this crisis have created an enormous apathy. If you look at the biggest party in Europe, that's the apathy party, that's the SOPA party. At last election at the European level, it got 55%, right? So in a sense, the challenge for the center-left, or for every politician, if you like, is to get access, to be attractive in relation to the apathy party. That's what we're going to do. So we didn't get them on our way into the crisis. Now we have a second trying to get them on the way out.
Add to that, yeah, quickly.
Just to finish, I think that the financial crisis was actually solved by actually easy money, and I think that a lot of the costs with the crisis is actually yet to show up here, especially the fiscal costs.
Aye. So there's more to come. This is only we've just seen the beginning of it. That's a bit scary. Please do state who you are and what company you're with or who you're representing here. And go ahead, sir.
Steve Schiffers from City University. Question for Paul about whether, in fact, the moment has passed for radical regulatory reform, because people now believe, or at least the media is giving the impression, that the crisis is over and that essentially we're on the path to recovery without having done any of these major reforms. And as you say, reinforced by the banking sector's view that any more reforms would make things worse. And the other half of that would be, you talk about the pressures in Europe from the banking sector in terms of lobbying, but I believe they're probably even more intense in the US, where the pressures are really gutting, I think, and stalling most of the reform proposals without comprehensive reform, both in the US, and is it possible for Europe really to regulate on its own? And just a quick question on Iceland would be, was there any financial press in Iceland that was in advance of this crisis looking at the risks? I mean, you talked about the influence of the foreign press in precipitating the crisis. I was just wondering if in Iceland there was at the time anybody questioning this model.
First point is, yes, the lobby power in US is at least as strong as here, maybe even stronger. But that's not a defense for what's going on, I would say. But that's neither your point. I don't think it's too late to come out to realize regulation. If we take the Hedge Funds and Private Equity Directive, for instance, the reason why the city is so angry and so active in preventing is that this is the only directive right now, and I know on the table, which really go to the heart of the operation mechanisms in the hedge fund industry. You see, that's why they are reacting, because the La Rochère report and the supervision and the monitoring, that's important too, but the enforcement there is not at all a reality, you see. So that's why they react. And we are talking here about a period from now on until summer next year. So it's an ongoing fight, and I think we have a fair chance to get something through, if you like.
Ásgeir, yeah. Did they see it coming in Iceland? Did anybody warn them?
No, we were. I think, you know, in actually hindsight, we were very naive about the whole thing, and things had been going quite well for like 15 years. So we didn't really see it coming, and we were quite naive. That's the answer, really.
Okay, I've got a lot of questions. I do want them short, guys. You'll be able to make some commentary later in the next 2 days, but please keep them short, direct, because quite honestly, we've only got 5 minutes. I'm going to extend it a little bit longer. Rob.
It's Rob McLeod from MLEX. History is strewn with examples of politicians over-regulating to a crisis. Is there a danger that by moving on to heavily regulating the financial service industry, you'll stifle financial innovation? Financial innovation is important, otherwise we'd all be still swapping shells. And looking things in future emissions trading schemes, all these things are financial innovation. Is there a risk that you're going to over-regulate?
I don't think there's a risk that regulation would go too far now, apropos the question we got before. It's rather the other way around, that we are getting too less. On the financial innovation, well, in the sense that we can avoid financial innovation as connected to arbitrage, I think that's a good goal to obtain. It's not all financial innovation which is really productive to the real economy, but some